Hi there. Welcome to Women in Business, where I share the real-world stories of fabulous women who've made their mark in the business world. In this podcast, we look at the educational and professional journeys and their choices, as well as the aha moments that have led each of my guests to their success. When I started my business, I didn't know anything about the opportunities that were out there. But over time, and especially during the pandemic, I've seen women pivot their careers, create new careers, and shape their own futures. My hope for our listeners, whether you're a young girl dreaming big or a woman ready for a change, that you can find some inspiration in these interviews and see all the different possibilities that are out there for you and become inspired to create your own journey and go your own path. So let's get started with this week's guest. Tell everybody, who are you and what do you do?
So I am Kate Campbell, and I have a business called Wonderlust, which helps and encourages generally busy people who maybe think that they're not that creative or don't have time to be creative, to find out the joy of creative thinking and how they can fit it into their lives and how it can massively benefit their business, but also their well-being and their relationships with their family at home as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I suppose.
It's a very good nutshell. Mainly because obviously I work with creatives and sometimes I've done posts about creativeness and then clients have come to me and said, well, you know, we're not creatives, we do this. And it's like, but you are creative, because people just seem to think that being creative means you've got your knitting needles out or let's go do some decoupage or a bit of music. But it isn't. It is about innovative thinking. It is being creative in that way as well.
Yeah, I always say there's like three. I kind of think of it as three different parts to what is being creative, and the doing is the bit that everyone thinks is being creative. You know, the activities that you do, like you said, the knitting, the crocheting, the pottery or whatever, and that's a really important part. But then there's also the two other parts are inspiration and being inspired and seeking that out in the world and asking questions and being curious. And then there's the thinking, which I think you can't not think creatively when you're doing the doing, and when you're being inspired, you're still thinking creatively. Yeah. But you can also not be doing the doing, and you can also not be being inspired, but you can still think creatively. So it's something that's with you 24/7. You can't forget to pack it in your bag. You know, and you can switch it on in a second. It's just an amazing skill that lots of people think they haven't got, but they have.
Do you believe that everybody has it? They just have it untapped?
Definitely. Or it's lying dormant, because I think we all used it when we were a kid, when we were growing up. You know, that's how we learned about the world. It's how we explored and played and got things wrong and didn't care if we got things wrong. You know, that we learn about the world through creative thinking, through curiosity and wonder. So, but then somewhere along the lines, probably during childhood education and all of that, we get told we're not creative, so we believe it. And then we shut off every kind of creativity. Or maybe we were told we were creative, but it wasn't a good career path, so we only think of it as a hobby and a luxury.
This has come up a lot on all of the interviews that I've had with women, especially women that have created their businesses later in life and they've found their passion in what they wanted. Yeah. They can thread it back to something they really enjoyed, but were told they either weren't going to make a career out of it, or there was no provision for that sort of access for them from where they lived. So we're going to go way back to the beginning. I always call this so this is to young Kate. What were you into at school? What were the subjects you enjoyed?
I did love everything creative. Yeah, my mum said I was cutting and sticking from a very young age. I remember one. Do I remember it or not? You know, you're never sure, are you? But my mum reminds me, when I was maybe 6 or 7, she decided that I needed to find out about sanitary products, and she left me in my room with a box of tampons. Just to kind of, you know, explore them and see what they were. And I came out like half an hour later, and I'd built like this hanging mobile with these tampons. and I really had to take it to school to show my teacher, and Mum was like, maybe not, maybe we won't do that. But
I
So
can, I mean, this
think,
is slightly off thread, but it's follows your tampon story. Is I used to be a teacher, and when you're in school, they have brass band
yeah.
and all the kids have the trumpets and everything. And my year threes were all lining up when I'm not mentioning any names. One young gentleman showed me his trumpet valve cleaner.
Oh,
Needless to
Ah,
say, his older sister was not too impressed. They had found a use for the tampons. He'd grown up he was the only boy in a house of women,
yeah, no, that's
single
great.
mother. And I rang her up and I said, luckily I knew her really well. And I rang her up and just said, so I have to tell you the situation and I'm going to try and tell you without laughing. And I'm really sorry if I do laugh. And I told her, and she was just in stitches. And she said, oh my God, you can tell it's a house of women that we just leave them lying around, help yourself. He's obviously
Brilliant.
thought it's a trumpet valve cleaner.
Well, there's one of those, creative thinking tasks is to think of alternative uses for an object, isn't it? So
He's
that's how
very
you,
creative, or he
yeah,
was very creative.
that
It's
is
brilliant.
creative thinking in its essence, I think. Definitely. Amazing.
So obviously you weren't allowed to take the tampon mobile to school. So as you went into secondary school, what were the subjects that you chose then if you were down that creative?
Yeah, I did choose every single creative subject that I could. So I did art and textiles and design and communication, as it was then. So I did all of them. And every time I went and, when you went up to that really old computer and typed in what you liked doing and it printed out the jobs that you should do, they were all creative jobs. But I was also quite academic at school. I was kind of good across the board. So in that day, if you were academic, you just went along the academic route. And there was
Did you have it in your school? See, we had it that if you chose certain sciences, it ruled out certain creative. So if you were down the academic and the creative route, so for me, I was both, but I chose sciences. So to be able to do chemistry, physics, and biology as separate subjects and not
yeah,
dual science,
yeah,
it knocked out availability to HE art.
really.
And I managed to do music. I managed to hold on to music, but it knocked out all of the creativity to fit in the science. You couldn't have
Oh
the
no,
dual path. You could only have a little bit. You could have a little
that's
bit of music to
terrible.
tap into it, kind of thing. So was that the same with your school,
I don't
or?
think I don't think it was. I mean, I suppose if I'd have chosen the three sciences, I'd have had one less option to choose from the creative subjects. But I don't remember it being an either or for
Hmm.
me. But that's crazy, isn't it? Because scientists need to be creative. You need to think creatively to be a scientist. So,
Absolutely.
you know,
How would we have the very quick pandemic vaccination
yeah,
if they hadn't had some
exactly.
very innovative, creative thinking
Yeah,
scientists that got
yes,
on the job really quickly?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's terrible then, and it's terrible now, to be honest, in
Yeah,
terms of how much creativity is valued in school.
well, it
I
is
don't,
because obviously with the funding, it's
yeah,
wiped out so much.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I do this. I do digress off my
No,
general central
no,
path,
love a
but it's how I.
tangent.
It's how it's sort of like I do keep on warning people. It's very chill. It's all about me learning the prequel of a person, and then I get really excited about what people talk about, and then
Yeah.
that's it, woo, all over the place. So back to your subjects. So what subjects did you choose then?
For GCSE,
Yeah.
yeah, it was those arts, textiles, D&C, design and communication. They were the only really creative subjects that were available. So I chose every single one that I could. But yeah, like I said, I got guided towards an academic route after school. And
Hmm.
also things like, I think I possibly would have done textiles at A level, but that was at a different college, a college that I didn't want to go to because my mates were going to the other one.
Yeah.
Um, and I could have done art at that other college, but it was very fine art, very traditional art, and I was much more experimental in what I used to do. So I ended up doing A levels in psychology, communication studies, which was kind of, I suppose, turned into media, I guess, and French.
Oh right.
Yeah. So, but I suppose, and then I went on to do a degree in linguistics, which part of me is like, well, actually, that is creative because I love playing with language. And I still love playing with language now and words and so it's creative to a certain level, I think. and so that's why I guess I was attracted to that side. But I kind of dropped all the creativity in terms of education after GCSE, which in hindsight, I probably should have
Hindsight's a
done.
great thing, but yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
after you did so you went and did a degree in linguistics, you say?
I did. Yeah.
That to me sounds really hard. I'm from
Yeah.
the north. I don't even speak English properly. So never mind talking other languages.
Well, it's not other languages. It's actually I they always used to describe it as the science of language.
All right.
So it's you're analyzing how languages are put together. You're not actually learning other languages. So, and it's things like sociolinguistics or psycholinguistics, child language acquisition. There's the core subjects like phonetics and like the meaning of language. It's really interesting, really fascinating.
All of that I never knew. So there you go. I've now learned of another thing. And I've got a school friend that does linguistics at York University. And I've just always assumed that it's because she was talking different languages.
Yeah, well, I mean, it maybe some do have that element as part of it, but mine certainly didn't.
No, it was like phonetics rang out there because obviously, again, because of ex-teaching, I remember my kids
yeah.
as younger saying, "Ah is my sound and A is my name."
Yes.
So that they're learning to. So no, I very even now I have to sort of pinch myself not to go through things going at Bert Kurt.
Yes. Yes. And we all need to convert back to that way of talking about words and letters, and then it'd all be easier, wouldn't it?
Hopefully, wish.
Yeah.
But like I say, I'm from the northeast, so it took me, this is for a linguistic person, it took me till I was working in a school when I said the word, and this has always blown my mind, I said the word tret.
Oh, okay.
As in the past tense.
Treat.
So yeah, so I was like saying, yeah, well, I tretted to something, and I kept saying it, and nobody was saying anything. Eventually, another teacher said to me, "Can you please stop saying tret? The word doesn't exist." I said, "Yes, it does. It means treated." And they went, "No, it's a northeastern thing. It's not." And I came back. My husband is clever, very clever. And I said to him, and I went, "You will never know. The word tret does not exist." He went, "Yes, it does." And we researched it and found out, yeah, the word tret is non-existent. It is treated, but the northeast area.
I was going to say, but it's a dialect, isn't it? It's an accent, a dialectal word. Therefore, it does exist in the world. Therefore,
Yeah.
it is
Just not in educational English.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, but that, yeah, local dialects, that was part of linguistics as well. Studying the difference and things like that. Really interesting. That's still very interesting, definitely. But it was one of those subjects that what do you go on to do with that afterwards?
Yeah.
It's
So what did you go on to do?
Well, I went into publishing, and I worked as an editor.
So is that a normal progression from linguistics to editing?
It's not. Most people, to be honest, went into teaching, but a few people, not many actually. It's probably similar to English language. People who study English language often go and do something completely different. So I don't know if it's a natural progression really, but it's what I did. My mum had written a couple of books, so I knew a bit of the background into the publishing world, I suppose. And it was her that said, have you thought about editing? So yeah, although my first job was for a tax and accountancy publishers, which I knew nothing about.
Do you have to then do like an extra course to do editing, or do you get in at the ground level of an editor house or publishing house and build up?
That's what I did. I mean, there are courses you can do to learn copy editing, proofreading, but I went in at kind of entry-level editorial assistant and got taught on the job.
So what do you think on your CV helped you get that editorial assistant job?
I suppose the linguistics, I got a first-class linguistics degree, so that's the only thing really that I could think of that got me the job.
So you had no experience except for obviously you could use your mum being an author.
Yeah, actually I did go and do some work experience at a publishing company, which must have been before I started that job. I'd forgotten that. So yeah, I did go for like a week at publishers and just work for a week and get some work experience. So that probably helped.
Well, yeah, and it also like helped you sort of like not rule it out, so it couldn't have been.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad work experience.
No, it was great actually. It was probably better than my first job because the books were far more interesting. The tax and accountancy is not my thing.
How do you
Um,
find that? How do you edit something that you don't understand, if you know what I
yeah,
mean?
it's weird, but you can do it. You can tell whether something makes sense or not without understanding it, which sounds really odd, but grammatically, you kind of the flow of a sentence, you know whether there's something that jars,
Mm.
and then you throw it back to the author. Does
Does this
this,
make sense?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So do you find that when people send you emails, if they don't have the right grammatical things, it really boils your blood?
No, not really. Although a few things that I actually said this to my husband the other day. You're welcome is one at the moment which people has put in YOUR instead of YOU apostrophe RE. It's
Yeah.
happening so often. And maybe, but there's the thing, isn't there, about language evolving through time? And new words come in and old words go out, and maybe that's something that will evolve through time.
I think as well that something that possibly, I mean, I have no experience, is the whole texting.
Yes.
It's quicker to write your like that than it is to press a button to change your letters into
Yeah.
the grammatical things to put an apostrophe to then do the R and the E. So you
Yeah.
find that people are doing that and then that is translating onto social media. So
Yes.
then people are picking up that as the spelling
Yeah.
as faster than otherwise.
I saw on the news yesterday, they were saying that I think it's the postal system or road signs, they're taking out all the apostrophes because the system can't recognize them. So there's, street names like Lord Mayor's Walk or something, and they're actually taking out the apostrophe. So some people are going absolutely crazy about this because it's not
It
grammatical.
probably, I was going to say, and also it probably costs more money to put that apostrophe in.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it saves money, which is what everywhere in the UK is trying to do at the moment. Not
yeah,
necessarily saying that that's correct, but yeah,
yeah. But
there's yeah.
part of me is like, these are the rules, this is what it should be. But part of me then thinks language evolves, and I like the fact that language evolves
Yeah,
and changes. Yeah, so it's interesting.
yeah, it is. See, I told you we diversed off things, and you hit a subject that I've really sort of like, and I'm making mental notes of what I need to go and research on my
Yeah.
in my time out. So you stayed at this editor's house, and then did you stay in other publishing houses? Did you? Is that
Yeah,
how other jobs went?
I went to another job as a copy editor for a more interesting publisher. So I worked on, it was Hodder and Stoughton, the publishers, and it was the education department. So it was textbooks for English secondary schools. So it was more interesting in my eyes because there was pictures, images, color, which I hadn't had before. So that was much better job than the tax and accountancy in that respect. I enjoyed working on that, and also English, which is obviously was a really nice subject to work on. Yeah, so I did that for a couple of years, I think. But then I remember the moment actually when I was stood in the kitchen and there was promotion available. It was my boss that was leaving, and I kind of knew that they wanted me to apply. And I saw the advert in the office kitchen, and I just had one of those moments when I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. This is not the way I want to head, because the job changed. You did less editing, you did more kind of going out for meetings
Managing.
with authors. And yeah, as commissioning editor, it was like, I don't want to do that. So I genuinely think it just wasn't creative enough for me.
Mhm.
So I just left. I mean, this was in my 20s as well, so it was quite early to have a bit of a career change, but I had that feeling of I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So I left and I moved back up north, and I continued to do freelance proofreading and copy editing, but I went back and studied art and design, and then went on to do a degree in printed textiles and surface pattern design.
So you've got 2 degrees.
Yes.
You smarty pants.
Oh no, that wasn't in the plan, but yes, I do. Yeah, so I still had the freelance option of, I worked freelance as an editor probably for a good 15 years after that. It was a really useful way to get some money coming in while I was retraining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So art and design. So you went back to like the creative doing
I did.
rather than the creative thinking at the time.
Yeah.
So did you follow that route then to go down into having a business interior design?
Yeah, so there was a few things in between that as well, actually. So yeah, from that degree, it was like surface pattern design, but I always designed patterns for products. So like very three-dimensional in my thinking of what this pattern is going to be for. A lot of people just design the patterns and then sell the patterns to, to people who are going to make them into something. But for me, it was very much about what is this pattern going to be for. So for my final degree show, I made or got made a lot of different products like placemats, coasters, tea towels and things. And so for my final degree show, I then took photos of those products with the help of my brother, who's a photographer. And I styled the pictures. I made a little catalogue. I ended up winning at the New Designers Awards in London for all graduates. I ended up winning a New Designers Award, which meant that my placemat design was taken on by a European company and they sold it around Europe. So that was really nice.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. But from that, I kind of realized that I actually enjoyed the styling of those products. And so I went and started work doing interior styling for photographs for advertising agencies, for press launches and various things like that. So it was a little bit of a shift from being a pattern designer.
But is that like sort of where you look through the catalogues, you find the items and you stage it for the photograph?
Yeah. So, well, as a stylist, a freelance stylist, you're brought into, it might be photographic agencies or advertising agencies, and you're basically, positioning, and you're getting all the props and you're doing everything. The photographer is there to take the photograph and you're making sure it looks as it should look according to the brief, according to what the advert is for. So it'd be print adverts or big billboard adverts or various different things. So I did like still life and interior styling for a few years after that. Yeah.
And then went on, is that when you went on so did you end up ever being an interior designer, or
so I am, yeah. there's so many different parts to my career, which in itself is kind of variety is the spice of life, I always think.
No, I love this kind of stuff because it's like I said to you before we started recording, I never knew. So in this recording, obviously, I'd heard of linguistics, but I didn't know what the hell that was. Didn't realise that would get you a job in an editor's thing. Then also you've opened my eyes a bit more about the editors. But then when coming with the styling, I knew that somebody somewhere must have been putting these things in place because my husband's a photographer and he doesn't have that kind of eye. So somebody somewhere has to be doing it.
Yes.
But amateur, sorry, he would kill me for that. He's a semi-professional, so he doesn't actually have. He's not come across stylists, which is why I've not heard of them.
What kind does he do?
Whatever he takes his fancy, but quite often he's done weddings, but he decided he didn't like weddings, and he does landscapes, and he's done brand photography for me on and off. And it's more of a like yesterday he was showing off to my eldest son that he was taking photographs of the local mayor inauguration in our village. So they'd asked him to come and take the headshots and the photographs. So he does it for a hobby. He doesn't charge people, but he says he likes to say that he's semi-professional because he has done paid weddings. He just found that extremely stressful and does not want to get in that line. He's actually a computer programmer. Photography is his side thing. But I've always just assumed that the people that make these products are the people that sort of set it up. So I now know that there's a stylist that does that. I mean, I know about fashion stylist, but I hadn't thought about product stylist.
No, if you click through a magazine, any of those adverts for products, they will have had a stylist. And the stylist in those kind of shots for advertising, the stylist is as important as the photographer making that shot. It's a collaboration.
Absolutely.
It's kind of one of those jobs that people don't realize how much attention to detail, which is kind of where, the attention to detail that I have in editing really kind of also can be applied to the styling work, because you're literally moving things a millimeter at a time if it doesn't look right in the shot. It's so precise. But it's really fun and it's very varied and you get lots of different briefs all the time, So I do love the styling work.
Now, I've seen in magazines and stuff that fashion stylists will get credit next to the photographer.
Mm.
Now, obviously, I've never looked at a product photograph in depth,
Yeah,
but
I think
but do
it's
they have? Do you
not
get
usually.
mention?
No, because I suppose if it's an advert, then you definitely wouldn't. If it was like an editorial, you might do. If you look in a homewares magazine, and some stylists do incredible shoots, they would get credit for that. But if you're working just for an advert for a product, and I mean, things like, I don't know, I've never done a lawnmower. I don't know how that came into my head, but stylists would work on shots of lawnmowers as well. So there's a whole range of things that you get to do as a stylist. I was working, one job that I really enjoyed actually was for like supplements, like
Like
um,
vitamins and stuff.
yeah, vitamins and stuff. So obviously, it's just a jar of supplements, but they had this idea that it was brain food, and so I had to kind of cut out a cardboard copy of the brain, and then we positioned it on top of sand, and it's all about the lighting as well and where you get the shadows, and then the jar was kind of at the bottom as if the brain was coming out of it. So there's so many different, and then we drew like circles in sand, and I was sprinkling turmeric in to get a really nice color in the sand. So it's so creative, really, if you.
It's like you having an image, but then working backwards. So you
Yeah.
have an idea, and then you work back how creatively
Yes.
segue into there.
Yeah.
Creatively figure out how you're gonna
Yeah,
get that.
how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fab. Did you really enjoy doing that?
I did really enjoy it. Yeah, I think, because I live up near Leeds, there is a lot going on in Leeds and up north. But if you want the true creative stuff, it still is kind of London based. So I did go down and do a few things in London, but actually then kids came along, so that kind of just took out so many years of my life. And it's not, stylist is being a freelance stylist is it's not great, doesn't fit very well with having young children. It's very last minute.
Yeah, you
uh,
have to, like you say, you have to be there. It's not something you can
yeah,
do
exactly.
virtually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, going on from the stylist,
Yeah.
where did you go to then?
So I had my two children, and then when they were younger, so the styling kind of stopped. But when the kids were younger, myself and my friend, who's also very creative, we used to make each other presents, and for other people as well. And it was one of those classic things of, oh, you really should sell this. People would say, you could sell these kind of things. So we're like, well, shall we give it a go? So we started a little business together where we designed the patterns. So going back to that, and then we got the patterns printed onto various kind of homeware products, cushions, lampshades, coasters, bags, mugs, all notebooks. So we had a very small business really doing that, where we sold to trade and we sold to, going to craft fairs and things like that. But it fit really well in terms of we got together while the kids were at school, and then so it was kind of like school hours. So I had this little business. We were called Katie and Josephine, and that lasted for a while, but really, really hard way to make a living.
Mm.
Especially because there was two of us as well. So it was really fun and great, working with your best mate and going and doing the fairs was lots of fun. But at the end of the day, it wasn't. To be honest, though, I didn't know now what I know about business then, and I think it would be very different now if we were to do it again. But it was great while it lasted. But I ended up. Jo was a special needs teacher, and she upped her hours there, and I decided to go back and do the styling work again.
Yeah.
So I returned to doing bits of that, and then from there, that's when I realized that actually there's a lot of interior styling as well. So you're doing sets in a studio of room sets and things, and I've always loved interiors, always. And I just thought, because styling is so unpredictable in terms of you think you've got work for the week, and then the day before you find out you haven't. It's
They
really,
can cancel that later in the
yeah,
day.
yeah. For as a freelance stylist in the kind of places that I was working, they can. Bigger jobs, I think, maybe like for magazines, you'd get more notice. But so it wasn't. It was hard to kind of juggle that really. So I decided that I would go into interior design, which I still do now. So I started train to do like an online course in interior design.
Was this before COVID, or did
This
COVID?
was, yeah, this was This was before COVID. Yeah. Sort of maybe 2016, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did like a few months work experience at a commercial interior design company local to me. But then, and I was also doing this course, but then I just started putting the word out there that I was doing these things. Took a few photos of my own house, really, and slowly started to get work. And by the end of it, I was kind of getting enough work to kind of say, well, why am I even doing the course, really? Because I'm doing the course to get work, but I'm getting the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't actually finish that course because I started getting more work. So I started doing interiors, and in the end, I realized that I kind of niched down with the interiors, and I still work mainly with holiday rentals and Airbnbs. And I think the thing that I liked most, and I still like about that, is that I'm helping them with their business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different than somebody's home. They've got a client, a guest that they're wanting to please. So for me, I've kind of got two clients in a way, but I like the fact that I was helping them to make their business better.
Yep. No, I get that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it gives you a sense of purpose
Yeah.
that you're makes you feel good to help
Yeah.
other people to
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah. And I think my interiors business is called Be Brave Interiors. And I'm very much about pushing the boundaries of design and being a bit different. And obviously that is what Airbnb and holiday rental owners have to do to stand out. So it's that element of you need to be different than your competition in order to stand out. And also Airbnb and holiday rental owners need photographs. So I had that experience of how to make a really good image from my styling experience. So I was able to pass that knowledge on to them as well, because without a great photo, you're never going to get any bookings.
So now I know that you don't use tampons to advertise these houses, but it goes back to that you making that mobile as a feature in
Yeah.
it's a style as a
Yeah.
feature in it's a mobile is something that you hang from the ceiling that is going to be in a room. So all the way back when you were 6, you went all the way around in a circle and actually became not with tampons, but a proper
Yes.
interior designer and stylist,
Yes.
like putting things together to
Yeah.
make something like
Yeah.
that. See, this is it's amazing about how sometimes there is a thread somewhere that
Yeah.
leads you to where you were meant to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Totally.
that's why I like this. I like the empowering and inspirational women I speak to that have been guided down a route but have managed to bring it back round to
Yeah.
where they were meant to be.
Yeah. To what I really enjoy.
Yeah. So moving on from that, you also
Mm.
have something else now.
Yes.
So tell me
Yes.
about that.
So yeah. So Wonderlust is the new business, like I said at the beginning, all about creative thinking. So what I realized by working the way I do with my interior business was that because I really wanted to help other people to do their own interiors if they can't afford an interior designer. So I was always encouraging certain ways of thinking and pushing yourself that little bit further and trying different things. And so from that grew the idea that actually we need to just sometimes take a step back and notice things that we might otherwise not notice and be curious, and that kind of whole thing about creative thinking just started to become more apparent to me. And actually, that is what really lights me up. And that is what I want to help other people do, whether that's for their interiors or not. So I started a membership which was focused on people on Airbnb and holiday rental owners to get their creative juices flowing, I suppose. And then a couple of people joined who didn't have an Airbnb, and they were like, can we still join? I don't have an Airbnb, but I really like what you're saying and what you're talking about. And it made me think, actually, this is applicable to everybody, not just people who run a property business. So it's evolved, probably that's maybe about over the last year, into something which is now really focused on creative thinking and So it's that side of creativity that people don't expect as well. So I'm not teaching people how to knit or how to make a pot out of clay. You know, there's so many amazing people who are doing that out there. I can't compete. But what I specialize in, I suppose, is finding a way for people to tap into that dormant creative thinking skills that we've all got, like we said at the beginning. So yeah, so it's evolved over the last year, but I think now I've really kind of hit on something that and busy people as well. We're all so busy, and many people don't have time to be creative, in speech marks, but actually it only takes a split second to change the way you're thinking, or go on a wonder walk, as I like to call them, noticing things and being curious and just playing and having fun, and a sense of joy from the little things in ordinary life.
So it's like slowing down and looking around you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It reminds me of a book. There's an American book about it's a circle that has a missing piece, and when he finally fills in that missing piece, he goes too fast. And he doesn't have time to sing songs to the butterflies and to see the flowers and things like that. Till eventually, at the end of the book, the piece that he's added is on the floor, and he's slowly trundling along without the piece, with the missing piece, sort of looking at singing to the flowers and things like that. And he realizes, and he slows his life back down because you do get so involved in work that you haven't got time to have a look at stuff.
I shared a reel a few weeks ago now, and it's gone viral, whatever that means, but like 220,000 views, which for me is like incredible.
That is very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really made a massive amount of difference to my Instagram account, but actually what it was about is this person who's on stage, and he's got these kind of like almost like a jigsaw puzzle, and he's talking about how we fill our lives with so many different things from such a young age, homework and then jobs and then family. And he fills in, and he's got this little white square, and he rearranges all these pieces so that they fill this bigger square. And the white square he says, but we don't leave any room for wonder. And that's this white square. And then he starts rearranging these pieces. I don't know how he does it. I need to figure it out. But he starts rearranging the pieces, and he rearranges them in such a way. And as he's talking, he says, we can rearrange our lives in a certain way. And there's this gap in the middle, and he fits this little white square in the middle. And he said, we can all find time for wonder. And in essence, that is exactly what I'm kind of preaching, I suppose. It's possible to find that time, even if we have such a busy schedule.
I always find as well, it's like you say, it's societal things and pressure of work and prioritizing. My husband is very good at finding wonder, as are my kids. They prioritize that, they might have a deadline, but he's going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
Whereas I find it very hard to, the fact that I'm actually, I am a creative, but I do find it very hard that when I'm working, I have to get the job finished.
Yeah.
And I find that it stops me from going for that walk, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
So working from home has been really useful, because my husband then says, right, and having a dog as well, having responsibilities that stop me and go, right, okay, I've got to go do this now.
Yeah. But I suppose it's like, even if you're stood waiting for the kettle to boil, that's a moment that you could wonder, or just let your creative thinking go. When you're picking the kids up from school, or not your kids, but, or you're in traffic, all these little moments that actually most of us have in the day.
I probably don't even recognise that those moments are creative wonder. They just think that they're daydreaming.
Yes.
Or,
that's one of my things that I wrote down as, tips. It's to be okay with daydreaming, because it's an amazing thing to do.
And yet in education, I think we get told that it's wrong to daydream.
Exactly. Stop daydreaming.
Yeah. We've both heard that sentence before, haven't we? Staring out the window. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be doing your maths calculations. Get your head down. Or we haven't got time for your daydreams. Get your coat, we're going. That kind of thing. All do it subconsciously. But then, like you say, daydreaming is that moment of wonder that can help
Yeah,
the creativity.
definitely. Yeah, we can we can travel so many areas of our brain that are maybe dark and light them up, and that's how we get to be more creative, is by having more experiences and more thoughts that we can draw upon.
When I do this podcast at the end, I always take out clips. And normally I have to read the transcript and pick out which clips I'm going to do. Just telling you up front, that is making a clip. Traveling to the dark areas and lighting them up is a
Yes.
fantastic quote.
Yes. Thank you. I'll use that.
Don't use it before I produce this
No, I
podcast. No, it's okay. So, what tips then do you have for girls coming up through school, women of an older age that have decided they want to do something different, or for those people that don't want to daydream or think daydream's a waste of time, or for all the teachers telling kids stop daydreaming and concentrate on your work? Any tips for anybody?
Well, I think ultimately the biggest tip, and I know it's easy to say, is just to do what you enjoy. That's what I tell my daughters all the time. Just go with what you enjoy. Don't necessarily think too far ahead, especially for young girls. I mean, my girls are 13 and 16, so they are at that stage where they're expected to know what they want to do. And I'm just like, don't even think about that. Just go with what you enjoy. Because like my journey has been so many different avenues, different steps, and variety is okay.
Gives you experience that comes in handy.
Yeah,
Life experience is just as valuable
it is
as having the education part.
massively valuable. Yeah. And, creativity wise, creative jobs, like all jobs are creative, but if we're going down creative jobs, your portfolio, your life experience is possibly more important than what grade you got for whatever subject in GCSE.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So I think everything is just a stepping stone to wherever you're going next. And you don't have to necessarily know where that is. If you've got dreams and goals and ambitions, that's absolutely great and fine. But be open to other avenues that might take you somewhere else, I think. And then in terms of just like day-to-day life and building on that creativity, it's all about taking those little moments to enjoy the everyday normal life that you have. You don't have to go and be on some grand trip somewhere to be inspired. You can be inspired from your day-to-day life as well. Notice things, be curious, ask questions, even if it's to yourself. And then also I love a bit of rule breaking. I think, in order to excel and grow in your business, you have to be one step ahead of other people. And if you are doing something different and thinking differently and maybe questioning a rule, I mean, I'm not talking about breaking the law here. Let's get that straight. Just like societal norms, just question them. Sometimes you just do things in a routine manner because it's what you think is normal to do. And that's just what everybody does. And actually, if it's what everyone does, maybe you need to be doing something different in order to grow your business and develop.
Brilliant advice. Brilliant advice. Thank you so much for coming for this podcast. I've really enjoyed it. As you can see, the fact I talked a lot.
Well, me too. I've loved it. Really nice to chat. Thank you.